There are new opportunities on Instagram that are about to change online business forever. Instagram is becoming the Silk Road of the internet, and the best part of it all is that, unlike a lot of people think, you don't need a lot of followers to take advantage of this. When it comes to Instagram and social media in general, I went very deep into the rabbit hole. In the beginning, I got 30 likes a post, and eventually I got 50, 60, 70,000 likes a post and thousands of comments. And I can tell you, I can assure you, that with what I know now, I would be able to sell as much with 1,000 followers as with 40,000 followers. The followers really don't matter that much. And so in this video, we will be talking about 5 ways to sell more on Instagram. On top of that, everything that you will hear in this video will be new. We will not be talking about the same hashtag and story tricks that everybody else is talking about on YouTube. Seriously, the next 10 minutes could potentially make you tens of thousands of dollars for your business. So let's start off. The first thing to do is actually to stop doing something, namely to post beautiful pictures on Instagram. Beautiful pictures will not result in selling more, will not result in more money. I see people taking the most beautiful pictures ever with brand colors and creating a beautiful Instagram feed of themselves in the most exotic places and really creating an unrealistic image of themselves. Now, here's the thing. The only people who are making money from beautiful pictures are people who are selling packages on how to make those beautiful pictures. And so if that is not your business model, then you are not going to make money by doing so. And so you should stop investing all of the time that it takes, which is a lot. I mean, it takes a lot of time to edit, to take those pictures, to travel to those places. All of the time you should be spending that in generating more revenue. Beautiful pictures have something to do with ego and have nothing to do with money. Now, I know that there are models and influencers who are getting brand deals and sponsorship deals because of their looks, because of how beautiful they are and how much more beautiful they can make themselves look on Instagram. But those are not recommendations. Like, become more beautiful is not a recommendation. Those are strategies that are not possible for people like us. And so stop posting beautiful pictures on Instagram. I call this rule the SDE rule, which stands for stop doing everything. The second thing we have to talk about are Instagram stories, because all the money on Instagram is in the stories, in the DM sections that are connected to those stories. If we look at Instagram and compare it to a regular shop, then the Instagram feed would be the storefront. And the stories would be the inside. And so people who are looking at your feed, who are liking, who are commenting your posts, they are looking at the storefront. They are on the streets. And as you know, there's no money to be made on the streets. There's only money to be made if people come inside your shop. And so people looking at the stories and then replying to those stories, going into the DM sections, those are people who are inside your shop asking buying questions to your employees. And so that is what you want. And so the story feature is a driver for DMs. The story feature is a way to open conversation in the DM. And once that conversation is open, people replying to your story with a heart or with a like, or hey, I like this, whatever. Those are people opening the conversations. In those conversations in the DM, you figure out which problems they have. And then once you know those problems, you provide a solution in the DMs. You drive them to an opt-in page. You drive them to a landing page. You drive them to whatever solution they need for the problem that they have at that moment. And so that is how you sell on Instagram. And when it comes to selling on Instagram, stories have 2 extra things that you have to notice. First of all, stories only appear for 24 hours in the story section, and so there's an inherent scarcity in that process. And as you know, scarcity drives sales. If you, for example, do a promotion or anything on stories, then people know it's only there for 24 hours, which is scarcity without implying that directly. Very important, very important. And another thing is that stories are the ideal way to build trust with your potential customer. it's almost impossible for somebody to unfollow you because of a story. And so you can really post almost everything on there. Things about your cat, things about what you did that day, things about what you eat, things about anything. And so those are all opportunities for building rapport. Because somebody might see that cat thing of your cat and then be like, hey, I have the same cat. You know, that's rapport. That is connection right there. And that you can create that through stories. Without being the salesperson, without being that salesy, manipulative type of person. No, you can just post a story of your day and automatically you will build that rapport and build that trust out, which is the foundation for any sales. And the third tip on this list, probably the most important one when it comes to selling on Instagram, is to like this video, because that helps a lot out with the algorithm of YouTube. And so thanks a lot for that. Now the real third thing on this list is hashtags. We have to talk about hashtags, and again the SDE rule applies here. I know that a lot of YouTubers have told you that hashtags are a good thing and that you should use hashtags, and therefore you started using hashtags. You perhaps even have built a hashtag ladder for your posts and spend a lot of time doing hashtag research and all of that stuff. And if that is you, then I only have one question for you. How did the hashtag thing work out for you? Probably not that good. Why? Because those things don't work. Hashtags don't work. If you use 30 hashtags, it might even have the opposite effect, because you have 30 hashtags, 5 comments coming from that. 3 of those comments will be bots. 2 of them will be your friends. And so those things don't work. Why not? Because people don't search on hashtags. Nobody is doing that. There's nobody who sits at home and who thinks, I want to learn more about selling art online. And then they go on Instagram, hashtag selling art, and then start reading the posts on there to learn things about selling art. Of course not. Nobody is doing that. Especially not in a world where people have Google and YouTube to search things on. And so the only people who are going on hashtags in order to find things are bots. The thing is that hashtags will not generate traffic towards your page. That's just not how it goes. And there are some benefits to hashtags. I mean, you can use hashtags and then the algorithm will know a little bit more about which people to put it in front and stuff like that. But those things are only valuable for people who have a lot of followers. And so this is not something for beginners. This is not an early Instagram page strategy. The fourth thing we have to talk about are likes and comments. Because it is indeed true that if you have more likes and more comments, then you have more authority, and more authority will always lead to more sales. But there's one catch that a lot of the big Instagram pages are not talking about. They're not telling you that. And that is that those big influencers with millions of followers have metrics, have ways to inflate their likes and comments and kind of fake their way into fame. Now, the reason I know this is because, first of all, I know some of those people. And second of all, I have went through courses that are being sold for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, where those people with millions of followers are explaining the tricks that they are using. Now, some of these tricks are fine. Others are, in my humble opinion, kind of fake. And so let me explain you one of the things that they do. For example, they will use engagement groups, which they now call in the influencer world Instagram masterminds. Basically the same as an engagement group, where a group of, let's say, 5 to 15 people will like each other's comments, like each other's posts, comment on each other's posts, share each other's posts in stories, do giveaways with one another all at the same time, and then tag one another, and basically inflate the engagement on posts. Now, the thing that you have to understand is that these people are not in one mastermind, not in one Instagram mastermind. No, they are in 50 to 100 Instagram masterminds. And so inevitably, they will get from that on their post already 500 comments by default. And so that is completely inflated. And so many of the pages that you are following on Instagram are actually to some extent fake. And so this is common practice. This is the doping for Instagram influencers. And just like with doping, it works, and if you don't take it, you cannot compete with the others. And so that is why they are all, or most of them are all kind of doing that. And that is, by the way, also one of the reasons that I love YouTube so much, because on YouTube you don't have any of those things. Now, if you want to know more about these Instagram mastermind groups and how that could potentially help you, I'm happy to explain it to you. I cannot help you out. I'm happy to explain the whole process to you if you're an artist working in the creative fields, really. And so you can always hit me up on Instagram. If you're not an artist, not working in the creative fields, don't hit me up on Instagram. Now, there's one more thing that I want to say about this whole faking your fame on Instagram, the fake it till you make it community. And it's probably less sexy than the thing that I just said, but here's the thing. A lot of people believe that faking it till you make it is a smart strategy, because you can inflate your fame and then sell more on Instagram through that. But there is actual science, actual data that we can use to know whether or not it is a smart strategy. And as always, we have to look at the history in order to know what will repeat itself. And if we look at, for example, the art world 50 years ago, then we see that people were using those same strategies on different media platforms. And if you go, like, if you look at all the media platforms in the past, television, newspaper, radio, all of them were using those, or there were people using those types of strategies on those platforms. Let's take, for example, magazines in the art world. 50 years ago, you had strange PR strategies that were buying journalists to write articles about particular artists. And as a result, those artists would have some kind of micro fame in those famous magazines. And all of those artists that were at the time the next promising big stars were selling paintings for thousands, sometimes even tens of thousands of dollars because of that. Now, if you look at all of those artists today, almost all of them are worthless. Almost all of those paintings that became famous with those strategies are now worthless. And if you think about it, this makes a lot of sense. Because if you read an article, if you ever read an article of those journalists that then wrote those types of articles, you will see that those articles suck. Why? Because those journalists didn't want to write those articles. They were paid to do so. They didn't actually thought that those artists were good artists and therefore they wrote about them. No. And so those articles were not the articles that were being shared by people, were not the articles that were being read by people, were not the articles that actually had an impact. And so that's kind of the same thing that is happening on Instagram. There are a lot of people who are inflating their fame, but then don't do anything with that fame. They don't make an actual impact in people's lives. And so we will see the same thing on Instagram. Those famers that fake it, or those fake famers, they will not be here anymore 5 years from now. They will not be here anymore 10 years from now. And you see those same patterns of people who try to fake it and try to make it and then fall off a couple of years later. You see that same pattern over and over and over again in history. There's a huge difference between a really powerful article and an article that a journalist wrote because somebody paid him to do so. Articles, powerful, good, amazing articles, can be shared for decades on end, long after the journalist is gone. An article that a journalist got paid for doesn't even get shared once, because it's just a bad article. And the last tip that I want to share with you is the least sexy one, but probably the most important one. And it is to use social media, but don't let social media use you. Which means that you have to control the social media consumption. You can post on it, but consuming it should be limited. These companies are way too good, and companies in general are way too good to addict you through manipulating things with dopamine in your brain and all of that stuff. And so it's very dangerous. Most people spend way too much time watching Netflix, watching movies, playing video games, listening to music, drinking coffee, and therefore sleeping less, watching social media stuff, like you name it, the whole list goes on and on and on. And a lot of people think they have enough willpower to limit themselves from those devices and only do it 5 hours a week. But the truth is, if you're only doing it 5 hours a week, you should have been a multi-millionaire by now. nobody has enough willpower. Nobody. I thought I had enough willpower, and then I was addicted to TED Talks first, and then a little bit on YouTube. And so I didn't have enough willpower to limit myself from those apps. And I personally use an app called Focus Me. I pay for that on a monthly basis, that limits my access to all of those things on my devices. And it's super powerful because it forces me to not watch it. If I want to, for example, undo it, then I have to deinstall Windows from my computer and install it again, so that Focus Me is uninstalled from the computer. And so that's a very powerful, very extreme way, but it's the only way that works for me. If it's like an app that kind of limits my access, but I can just change the settings or whatever, or uninstall the app, then I will uninstall the app. And so you have to take control over yourself. You have to take control over your social media usage as well. When it comes to social media, you have to start seeing and looking at it as business media, which means that you have to think about the ROI on the time spent and the actions performed on those devices. And once you start putting yourself in that mindset, you start questioning whether or not spending 10 minutes on hashtags is the right thing, whether or not you should think about editing, or whether or not you look good enough in that picture. All of those things, you start thinking about it and start questioning if that is the right 10 minutes spent. Perhaps you should have spent that 10 minutes on reading a book, on spending time with your family, on driving people towards DMs so that you can make sales in those DMs. Once you start to look at it from that perspective, you start to understand that there's a huge opportunity cost that you lose by spending time on, for example, looking whether or not you look good enough on that picture. And that's important because the worst thing that could happen potentially is that 10 years from now, you regret spending so much time on Instagram. So if you are interested in the process that I personally use to sell the things that I sell, watch one of my other videos. For example, this one, how to sell art on Instagram without having a lot of followers. That said, my name is Dries Ketels, and I hope to see you around. Ciao, ciao.